So here you are, your project's stitched and you're ready to hem the edges and you're not sure what to do. I did not press this because I'm going to be manipulating it so much with the hem that it's going to get some pressing in that process, so I've just left it alone. I want to show you the supplies that you'll need. You'll need a really strong needle, and I'm especially heavy-handed with my stitching, so I like these needles. They're Applique Needles made by Roxanne. I don't think you'll be able to read that, but I can link it below. They're just not like a cross stitch needle, not like what you would use for your cross stitch. It's actually made for applique. They're sharp, and I have a hard time breaking them, which is pretty amazing because, like I said, I'm really heavy-handed. So I really like these. There are other tapestry needles that you can use, but I would recommend getting something sharp and strong. You need a nice pair of scissors. These are really wonderful Dovo scissors, but you need something that's got at least a 5-inch blade, in my opinion, and cuts nice and fine and sharp all the way to the end. A lot of times scissors give out and stop cutting clean. You want it to cut all the way to the end. When you're snipping, you're going to be snipping some of the linen. So you need a good pair of scissors, and then you need thread. And so these are 2 threads that I like. This one is sometimes difficult to find. It's called Filet Agant Chinois 120. And I'm using color 302. Let's see if I can get this to focus. It buries into the linen. You can't even see it. And it's strong. So I can pull on this quite hard before it snaps. It's not as strong as this one, and you'll be shocked to know. Now this one you have to order. You can either order it from France. I think there's some Etsy shops. There's somebody in, I believe, California who sells it off her Etsy shop. It's a great thread. This one is Coats cotton. It's been around for hundreds of years. Not this spool, but this company. And it is really strong. I mean, you can really tug on it before it breaks. So this little project's not going to be handled a lot. I think either one of these would work fine. This is a tiny bit thicker. It's not quite as fine, and that's okay for me on this. So I'm not sure which one I'll use. You'll find out when I get started, but either one of these is great. This is extremely affordable. It's sold at Joann's. Make sure if you get it, you get the yellow spool because it's 100% cotton. You probably don't want polyester in your project. It probably wouldn't hurt if you used it, but that's just my preference. So those are the materials that you'll need. The other thing you're going to need is a ruler. And I like to use a clear plastic ruler. There are art supply rulers, sewing rulers. This is an inexpensive ruler. But I just want to measure out, because I have this excess fabric I want to get rid of before I start. And because my linen is precious, I don't want to waste it. So I've got about 1.5 inches on these sides. I'm going to cut 1.5 inches away from my work, and I'm actually going to pull a thread. So let me show you. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to find, and I've got one of my needles out, I'm going to find 1.5 inches, and I'm going to come down closer to the edge I'm going to pick one of those threads. Okay. Well, this is kind of rough measurement, so if you're off a tiny bit, it's not going to hurt. I'm just going to pull one of those linen threads, and this is tight, 40 count. And the reason I started down here is so that I can pull from the bottom, and I'm just going to keep pulling and pulling. I'm actually pulling this thread out of the linen. And just keep working it. And you can see it starting, sorry for the jiggle. You can see it starting to pull out. And just use your thumbnail and pull it down until you get it out of there. If this thread breaks, that's okay. You can find it and keep working it from the place that it broke. And you can see why I want to get it out of the edge as soon as possible. I would not ever start on the selvage because it won't come out of that selvage. You have to start on a raw edge. You have to pull it from a raw edge. And my nice needle is super tough, and so it's not breaking, and I'm kind of using the needle as pressure against the thread to pull it out. Okay, so now you can see it's out from the bottom to this point, and now I'm going to just keep pulling it. I'm going to stick my needle in up here. I'm just going to keep working it until I get it out all the way across. You can see that puckering. And there, it came out really nicely, and it didn't break, so pretty good. Oops. Okay. All right, so now I can take my scissors and I can actually cut on that open space, right where that thread has been removed. I'm going to cut that really carefully. And this is why you want really good scissors, and there are some inexpensive brands that cut all the way to the edge as well. You don't want scissors that stop part way when you're cutting your linen. You want them to complete the cut all the way to the tip of the scissor. And this doesn't have to be perfect. Sorry about the jiggling. I'm still trying to figure out this whole demo thing. Because it doesn't have to be perfect, because we're going to do some additional trimming work after this. So I get all the way to the edge, and now I've got this piece to save for like a pin pillow or something, and then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Now this side, be really careful and look at your motifs. This sampler is a little more challenging because it doesn't have a finished border. It's kind of hanging in space. So you don't want to pull your thread too close to that G. So you want to measure out from the lowest point, and that would be from the G. So I'm going to do the same thing here, measure 1.5 inches, find my thread, and this time I'll go from here. I actually got 2 threads by accident there, so I'm gonna go back and just work that thread out. Using my needle as leverage to pull, because this is a really tight weave. Some, like a looser weave or a lower count, would probably come out a lot easier. But this is over dyed, and it's 40 count, and it's tight, so I don't want to pull it too hard or too fast. I'm just going to gently ease it out, and I'm going to pull it out of that end first, and then hopefully it'll come out from the other side just as easily. I apologize, I'm bumping. I'm still figuring out this demo process, so. In there with my fingers. There we go. There we go. Okay. Okay. Okay, and then I'm going to cut that and I'll be back to see you. All right, I did want to mention to make sure you're pulling the thread in the direction from that's going in the direction that you want to make your cut. You don't want to come here and pull a thread that's going across your work. You want to pull the thread going in the direction, so you're going to pull a vertical thread to cut a vertical piece off. You're going to cut a horizontal thread to cut a horizontal piece off. The reason you pull the thread to cut your work is it's woven on a grain, and the weave has integrity and strength. And if you cut your fabric on the grain, on the woven thread, you'll get a nice squared up piece. At this point, there are lots of options. You can make a very wide hem. You can pull threads way out here, farther away from your work. You can pull threads closer to your work. You have a lot of decisions to make. I think the important thing is to be consistent and kind of go with the style of your work. This is based off a Schoolgirl Sampler. It's simple. You could do a fancy hem stitch. You could pull a lot of threads and do lots of decorative work. I feel like with this piece, it really warrants something really simple. And my antique pieces have very thin, narrow, simply stitched hems. So I think I want to go along those same lines. Now this piece of linen is 40 count, which means there are 40 linen threads per inch. So if you go down with your ruler, and I'm sure most of you already know this, but I'll just repeat it for anybody who doesn't. There are 40 threads from 0 to 1 in this section here. I think I want to leave about 1/4 of an inch around my design before I start pulling a thread for my finished hem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find, since this doesn't have a well-defined border except for right here, I'm going to find my point that's furthest out on either side and count 10 threads out from there. So going up to this green line that I've stitched, and I'm going to count out 10 threads. That's going to give me 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to go over to thread number 11, and that's the one I'm going to pull out. Okay. Okay, and I'm pulling that vertical thread. Okay, there it is. It's vertical. I'm just going to start working it. Whoop, okay, and there it broke. So you can see, even though it broke, I can see it where it's puckering, and I can pick it up and work it. Oops. It's not ideal to snap the linen thread, but it's not the end of the world either. And I apologize for my filming. I'm really new at this demo. The filming aspect is definitely a challenge. There we go. Okay. So we're going to pull it from the short side first, get it started. There. Okay, now we're not going to cut on this. So we did cut it to square it up. We're not cutting it. This now is your drawn thread. This is what you're going to work from as you're stitching your hem. Okay, so I've got that pulled out, and that was from the center working out. That was thread number 11. And I think for this sampler, since it's simple and it's schoolgirl, and I'm going to do a really thin little edge, I'm going to pull out thread 11 and 12 on every side. And then I'll show you what I'm going to do from there. Okay, so I'm going to go in just like I did. I'm working from the center out, so I'm not going to go in for my next thread. I'm going to go out. I'm going to make sure I get a vertical thread. And I'm going to pull it out, and I'll be back. Okay, I'm still working my way around. I've got 2 sides completed, and you can see this little square starting to appear. That's your corner. That's going to be your corner. So that's 2 threads pulled on the top and the bottom. This got a little bit distorted right here. I think I was probably pulling a little bit too hard. That's going to be okay, because that's where we're actually going to stitch. We're going to stitch into those threads, and so it should clean up really nicely. So here's the beginning of this 3rd side, and I'm being a little more cautious, a little more gentle as I pull. I'm just working that thread out. I know a lot of you have done drawn thread work, and I'm sure there's other techniques. I'm sure there's better techniques possible. This is just how I learned. Okay, and I'm going to keep going until I have 2 threads pulled on the side and the bottom. All right, now I have all 4 sides pulled 2 threads from thread 11 and 12, which is a 1/4 inch away from my work on all 4 sides, and you can see that nice little corner window that's appeared. And so now I'm looking at it, and you know, this is a tiny little piece of work, and I don't know that I want my edge to be quite as wide as it's going to end up. And so let me just turn it over and show you. You're going to actually fold up to your pulled thread line and press, and then you're going to go in and press again. And that's kind of, in my opinion, that's a little wide. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back around, and this is one reason why it's a little bit of a waste of linen, but once you cut that linen off, you can't get it back. So I like to leave a little bit more than I think I'm going to want. Sometimes it works out to be exactly what I want, but I'd rather do that and then go back and trim a little bit off. Now, the beauty of 40 count is that there are 40 threads per inch. That means half of that is a 1/2 inch, which is 20 threads. And I think, and since you're going to double fold it, you're going to double hem. You're going to double fold the hem before you start stitching. And so I think I'm going to go in, and I would like my hem to be double folded and end up a 1/4 inch wide, right up, butted up against those drawn threads. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do this off camera, and you can decide to do this if you want with your work, is I'm going to count out 20 threads, pull a thread, and then cut a 1/2 inch all the way around. I could, now you're probably wondering, like, why don't you just draw a pencil line and cut it? I just like to pull the thread because, like I said before, it squares up the weave. It makes your project, I mean, there's no distortion. If I cut it, I might be cutting thread 15, 17, 18. I want to cut exactly off the thread off that that's the same all the way around so that I know that this is squared. Okay, so I'm going to cut that back down and then I'll see you again. So I just want to pop in and show you, this is 20 threads from my drawn work, my 2-threaded thread, my initial pull. And so I'm going to cut here and discard this, and this will roll, this will double fold my hem and make it tiny, and I think more fitting for this little project. So it's a little bit of extra work, but I just think it's worth it in the end. You put a lot of time into your stitching. You're going to live with your piece for a long time, or share it with somebody who's going to live with it for a long time. All right, so I'm going to end up with something that looks like that all the way around. Oh, it just started pouring rain. Wow. Seattle. All right, so I've got it trimmed down to the width that I think I'm gonna like, and I've got my iron set on linen cotton, and I use this dry iron. It does not have any steam. I have over-dyed floss. Actually, it's Gloriana silk on this, and I don't want to take any chance of that migrating onto my linen, running. So I don't want any moisture at all. Wow, it's hail. I'm just gonna leave this in the video. It's pretty cool. All right, so I'm pressed all the way around to get it nice and clean and flat, and then I started cupping the corner here, because this is what my little corner is going to look like. You see that? Crazy. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to press up to my drawn threads, and then let me do that. I'll do it on this side. I'm going to do this on all 4 sides. I'm going to fold the linen up to the drawn threads and press all the way across, all the way to the edge. It'll look like that. Okay. I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. Even though this corner is not going to remain the way I'm pressing it, I want to press it because I need those lines. So I'm going to press all the way up. All the way up. I try to avoid pressing my floss too much. Press all the way up to the drawn threads. And I want to leave that, don't burn yourself. You want a nice hot iron to get that linen, get a nice crease in that linen. Okay, now you're going to go back in, and this, since I'm doing it such a narrow hem, this is a little bit fussy. If you make this wider, it'll be a lot easier. But of course, you're going to go halfway to the fold and then halfway again, so you get that thin little 1/4 inch, and you're going to go around and press it again. You just want to give it a good press because you're going to use those lines as a guide. And you can kind of just turn it with your fingers and feel it as you go. Okay, you're going to do that on all 4 sides. Okay, once you've done that all the way around, you will have press lines. Can you see that? Do you see that? Do you see that nice press line right there? That's where your miter corner happens. So you're going to bring that up to your little window, that press line right there is going to line up with your mitered window. Right? And then you're going to fold this, your double fold in up to your drawn lines, and this your double fold in up to your drawn lines to get that nice miter. From the front, it should look like that. And from the back, it'll look like this. And don't worry, we're going to clean that up and tighten that up when we stitch. Okay, and give that a little press. And you're going to go and take care of that on all 4 sides. Okay, your corner is really bulky. Your corner is really bulky right now, and so we're going to cut off just a little bit of that. We don't want to cut too much. Oops. And you're going to do that on all 4 sides. And then we'll be ready to start stitching. Okay, I'll be back. All right, I've reached the point where my beginning and my end are going to meet up. So I've got just that little bit left to do. So 3 threads might work out per little tuck, but it might not. So I'm just going to keep going until I get, oops, okay. All right, so we've got 3 threads. And looks like we're going to end with 3 threads. Look at that. Okay, so I'm going to take my last little dip in behind those 3 threads, then come into the hem last time and pull that up. Okay, now I'm at the end and you can see the beginning, so I'm going to go back to where I entered that last little grouping of that little corset. I'm gonna wrap it 3 times, whip stitch 3 times right in that spot, Okay. Looks really nice. Looks good. It's gonna look nice. All right, 3 times in that spot, and then I'm going to go in and right where that whip stitching took place, and go down and try to come out at the fold. Okay, and come out at the fold, and then I'm going to snip that thread sticking out right there at the fold. And I am done with the stitching part of the hem stitch. I'll show you what's next. All right, so now I have my piece. I've gone around, completely around the edge, pressing it and just prepping the corners. They're not going to be perfect. We're going to clean those up after as we stitch. And so we're going to work from the back. And you're going to get your needle. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to, you can do a waist knot if you want. This is going to get cut off, but basically you're going to do a quilter's knot where you take the thread and hold it down on the needle about 1/4 inch from the top. You're going to wrap it 3 times. Then you're going to pinch the part that you wrapped and pull the needle out, still pinching, still pinching, still pinching until you get to the end. And then you have a knot. Okay. You're going to come up. So we're going to just start here. And now this is just very simple Schoolgirl Sampler style hem stitch finishing. It is nothing decorative or fancy. You can draw a whole bunch more threads. You can wrap them differently and get some really beautiful fancy finishes. This is just a super simple, basic finish for a simple little sampler. Okay, so you're going to come up somewhere here on an angle and come out on the fold. Okay, pull that out. Okay, and this will get cut off. Because that's going to be cut off, we need to anchor it. So we're going to do 3 little whip stitches here, getting about 2 linen threads. Because, you know, and you're going to use your sharp needle again. This is the needle that we picked in the beginning. You're not going to use an embroidery needle or a tapestry needle. Okay, so now our threads are secure. All right, the edge of our fold should be right at the base of where we drew up our threads. So from that first position where the thread that you just whip stitched is coming out, you're going to go under 3 linen threads with your needle. Okay, you're going to come back down where you first came in. See that? And you're going to pick up 2 linen threads. And you're going to pull. And you're going to see you're getting the beginnings of that little corset, that little hourglass shape. Okay, so we're going to go pick up 3 threads. We're going to come back to where we just went in, just under where we went in, into the hem, and take 2 threads on an angle, and then pull that little corset. Okay. You don't need to pull it too tight. We're not doing fancy work, fancy drawn thread work. Pick up your 3 threads, go in where you Go back to where you just went in. Pick up a couple threads of the linen. Come back out. Oop. And pull that little corset. Go back in. 3 threads. 3 linen threads. Come back to where we just started. Hopefully this is focusing okay. On the angle. You see those cute little hourglasses starting to take shape. Go back to the beginning. Okay, and I stitch in hand most of the time, so this is just really comfortable for me, but if it's uncomfortable for you, you can put a pillow under your work. You can you know, sit with something under your lap to help raise it up. And eventually we're going to work all the way around the sampler. But what I want to show you, I'm going to keep working this until I get to the corner, and then I'm going to show you how I address that. One important thing to remember when you're filming a tutorial is to turn on the camera. So from here on out, you'll see that I'm using a scrap piece of linen to demo the rest of the process on your hem stitch for your sampler. I completed mine, thought I was filming it, and it wasn't turned on. So we're going to go ahead and complete this tutorial using this little piece, and it will, I think, it will work just fine. All right, so I've stitched almost up to the corner, and you can see that I only have 4 threads left instead of the 3, and that's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in under the threads and grab the 4 threads. Okay, and then I'm going to go into the fold of the hem where I came in and grab a couple linen threads and then come out and pull up my last little hourglass. Okay, and so now I'm up to the window, that little window there. And now I have to deal with the corner. And so what I want to do is bring this up here to the level of the window. So I'm going to come over. I've already tucked that, and I'm just going to come over and pick that corner up and just do a little whip stitch into the corner and back into the hem. Right. Okay, and you can see that this side is hanging down, so I want to make sure that's up. So those corners for that miter are meeting each other. Oh. Okay, and then I'm going to come across here and just run a thread from corner to corner. Get that thread out of the way. All right, and now I'm going to go down the miter, and I'm going to use kind of a ladder stitch, and so I'm going to turn my work. That looks Looks like I pulled that a little bit too tight there. That will ease out when you press it, but okay, and then I'm going to take a thread on one side and then cross over and take a thread just on the fold of the opposite side. And I've pinned this. Pins are nice, you know, to hold things in place, but boy, can they get in the way. Okay, I'll go down another on the right-hand side again, right on the fold. And then I can just cross over onto the left. Just kind of want to hide those stitches in there. And you pull that up tight. You can get a nice point, and you don't have to worry about the point being perfect. And then I'm going to just do a couple of whip stitches here at the end. I'm going to do this on all four corners. Okay, so that's a pretty nice sharp point. Okay, and now I am coming back, turning it back this way. I'm going to take that pin out. This needs to come up to the level of the pulled threads. Okay, I'm going to run the needle up under inside. Okay, so it's just going to be hidden. It's just going to go all the way up to that point right there. And now I'm going to go in the window. I'm going to take 3 threads. I'm going to start the process all over again and go down that side. Okay, so I take 3 threads from the body of the work, then I go into the hem, the same place. Oops, I go into the hem now at the same place that that thread. I'm going to line up with the first of those 3 threads. Okay, I pull that little hourglass, take 3 threads. Go into the beginning, take it at an angle, pull it. I'm going to keep working it. Okay, I'm going to work that all the way around until I meet up with the beginning of my work. Okay, so I'm going to get this set up to a point where I can show you how you tie off a thread. If you need to add more thread, let's say this thread breaks or you run out, your piece isn't quite long enough, I'm going to show you how to add a piece of thread. Here's Elizabeth. She's been pinned and stretched, well, stretched and then pinned. And I did it just like you would kind of do lacing of a sampler for framing. I started top and bottom, side, side, and then I went out from the center, top, bottom, side, side, and so on and so forth until I got to the corners, and then I really pulled these out to get a nice 90-degree angle. So we'll see. I'm going to take the pins out and then I'll press her. And I think she'll be ready for however she ends up being displayed. I thought she might be fun. I'm thinking of a lot of different options on how I can display her. Anyway,